Now at this point, everyone and their mothers knows about chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune, and when it was first announced, the only thing I could think of was, man, I really have to finish this 3-hour video essay fast. But after that, I was super hyped. Now I've been a Toby Fox head since 2015, but that small anxiety part of my brain was worried. It's been 4 years since chapter 2. What if the wait wasn't worth it? What if it wasn't good? Well, ladies and gentlemen, after playing both chapters, beating the secret bosses, and getting both eggs, I have to say, and it's good! Yeah, these chapters are both incredible. I loved the new characters, I loved all 3 members of the Fun Gang's character development, and I really loved the rules card polycule. God, it was all just so incredible. I especially loved Chris's interactions with us, the Soul. Yeah, I know I deserve a hockey stick to the heart for picking all the dialogue options where you flirt with Birdly, Chris, and I know I made you ask him to the festival, but you'll learn to love him. I'll make sure of that. Yeah, even after 4 years of Deltarune tomorrow, Toby Fox has still got it. But I am disappointed that he didn't personally ask me, internet content creator and universally beloved icon Kustopia, what I thought of the game. Despite this crippling blow to my ego, I loved the game a lot, and there's a lot I really wanted to talk about. But after playing through the game, there's one specific part that made me think, yup, that's the first thing I'm gonna make a video on. Now, I ran a poll a few days back asking you guys if you like Chapter 3 or Chapter 4's secret boss better, and to my surprise, everyone and their mother picked Chapter 4. This actually came as a shock to me, because yeah, I do agree with the vast majority that 4 was better than 3 in terms of plot and story significance, but in my opinion, the secret boss of Chapter 3 is the best out of every single chapter so far. The build-up, the implications, the subversion of expectations, and the actual fight itself were done perfectly. And the fact that I did all the secrets in my first ever run made it even better. Now, some of you may be confused, so how about we just hop right into it. Today, ladies and gentlemen, let me go over why Chapter 3's secret boss is a genuine masterpiece. Now, within Chapter 3, a majority of Tenna's TV time is spent in this NES-like world that takes clear inspiration from the original Legend of Zelda game. It's really funny, and I love all the character interactions. But what I really want to talk about is after getting S rank in the first round, you're able to go into the S rank room. A room you'd expect to be super fancy and amazing, since with the other rooms, you know the higher the rank you get, the better they are. But once you cross through that guarded S rank door, you're greeted with a filthy, worn down changing room, where only the lowest of the low reside. Now, from an outside perspective, this could just be a joke at the player's expense, rewarding the effort of getting an S rank with nothing but a crummy room. But obviously, it's a Toby Fox game, so there's always gonna be more than that. Except for the times when there isn't. You then talk to this plug boy named Ram, a character who honestly took me so off guard when I first met him. There were just so many signs pointing to him being the secret boss, and yet he's hardly mentioned. He's known Chris for a very long time, with him being part of the cyber world before Chris and Azrael took him home. He's an outcast from the rest of the other Darkners, he's aware of Chris's desire for freedom, and he keeps referencing Jevil and Spamton's iconic catchphrases. Yeah, that last one seems a little bit too obvious. Honestly, Ram deserves a full video on his own, but that's for another day. Ram tells Chris about how the game Tenna's having them play isn't the original, and that he tweaked it, saying how the original game Backstage gives Chris true freedom where they can make their own decisions. A game where your choices matter, the exact opposite of what Deltarune's trying to tell you? Where have I heard that one before? Anyways, after speaking with Ram, you head backstage and begin the game, with Chris picking up a controller with yellow and pink buttons to play it with. I'll get into that little detail later. But as Chris boots up the game, they, and we, are greeted with the same map that Tenna created for round 1. As you walk around, you notice some very interesting things. For one, the map is covered with a ton of retro-looking monsters, who, when approached, don't do anything. They simply walk around, and when you run into them, they don't try to hurt you. There's also distinctly no music when you look around, only the sounds of ocean waves. And when you enter the shop, the entire room is just empty. As you continue exploring, you come across a strange trapdoor, and when you enter it, you find a sword. And once you take it, it makes this strange noise. Sound familiar? Not only does it play a sound similar to the Weird Roots jingle, but when finding that room in round 1, Tenna refers to it as the mail room, which is a direct reference to Spamton, as not only are Spamton and Tenna canonically bitter exes, but Tenna also refers to him as the little mailman. So the sword is found in the mail room, and a sound that resembles the Weird Roots jingle plays. You know who's the direct cause of the Weird Root in the first place? That little mailman. Once that sword's in your inventory, you're sent back to the surface, but now you have a level meter. After seeing this, my first thought immediately went to Undertale. I did not want to kill any of these monsters and searched around the map, trying to find a way to progress without killing. But then I came across the shop again, with white text appearing in the room before me. Become stronger. After hearing that, you have no choice but to start killing the monsters, with them not fighting back until you've reached level 2. So much for freedom, I guess. But as you begin slaying these monsters, triumphant music begins to swell in the background. It's like the game itself is encouraging you to kill them. Even more, these aren't the quirky characters that you fight against in Deltarune and Undertale. These are just classic video game monsters that you slay to boost your strength, devoid of any kind of personality or quirks. As you continue exploring and getting stronger, you learn that with your newfound power, you can begin destroying the environment around you, leading you to find even more monsters and continue gaining power. The triumphant music still present as you continue battling. But as you explore, you come across a blue bird monster that flies around several trees, objects that you can't break until you reach the max level. And once that max level is hit and every monster is defeated, the music just stops. You can then go back to that blue bird monster. You can destroy the trees it flies into, and after many strikes with your sword, you can eventually kill it. But the question is, why would you even need to? You're already max level, and with the amount of strikes needed to actually kill it, it's something you need to go extremely out of your way to do. Which is why I believe that this blue bird is actually supposed to represent Birdly. Not only because the monster itself is a blue bird, but because the continuous effort it takes to kill it mirrors the effort you need to kill Birdly. You have to repeatedly force Noelle, despite her protests, to use Snowgrave on Birdly, and when she finally does it, nothing of value is gained from the encounter. Once you slay every single monster, the music stops and you can go back to the shop. The words in the room changing to became stronger, which is what appears when you defeat Darkeners violently. While you explore this empty room, if you walk around it enough, you'll eventually stumble upon black letters that can only be visible if Chris walks through them. They read out, "Are you having fun?" And when I first stumbled upon it, I knew that the secrets of this chapter were gonna be crazy. The text itself could represent Tenna's desire to make the games fun for Chris. It could also represent that feeling of emptiness that's present in Undertale after you kill all the monsters in an area. You're all alone now, and the game itself is asking you if you're having fun with it. But I personally think the text is asking if Chris is enjoying the game, not us. Asking Chris if they're having fun with the freedom that this game's supposed to bring. As you continue to explore, you come across several mysterious areas, with one in a pyramid that flashes those pink and yellow eyes and a massive smile for a second before disappearing, and another room with black text that reads "See you soon" with a mysterious creature flying away. More on those two things later. And after gaining all that power, you are, in a way, given freedom. Everything in the world can be destroyed, and as you cut through those previously unbreakable trees, you stumble across a chest, and when you open it, you obtain a special item, the Ice Key. And as you grab it, a slow, eerie chiptune jingle plays in the background. I can't make out what it is, but I believe it's the flashback leitmotif. The one that plays when you visit Noelle in the hospital during the weird route in Chapter 2. This entire segment was so subtly amazing, with all the symbolism and hints that alluded to Snowgrave, Undertale itself, and a bunch of other interesting aspects that come into play later. I think the most interesting aspect about it all is the fact that the game doesn't give you a choice on how to handle these monsters. The game's supposed to offer you freedom, but you're forced to kill them. It makes you question what this freedom really is and what the cost of it will be. But this is just one piece to a whole, so let's keep going. The next section of the original game comes, of course, right after you get an S rank in round 2. After doing some more monster slaying and raft riding, you can stumble across this small area in the shape of a heart, and when you enter it, you see Tenna, talking to himself while you're out of frame. He questions why he decided to base the game he's having Chris, Ralsei, and Susie play off of this old one, with him worried about strange things that are starting to shine through. He then wishes for Chris to tell him that he's doing something right, and to smile and laugh. After that, you can also enter a strange cave with a dark blue room, instructing you to go to Northern Light, and in the background, a strange, eerie sounding theme plays. More on that later. As you travel north, the sandy yellow desert is replaced with white snow, and as you walk around, you find a large door with the symbol of the Deltarune on the front. After using the ice key, you're sent to a dungeon with a blue-gray color scheme throughout. The song heard throughout the dungeon, titled Glacier, is unsettling and creepy. It gives off the feeling that you aren't supposed to be here. After killing a few more monsters, you then come across yet another blue bird. But unlike before where the bird was out of the way and unnecessary to kill, this one blocks your path, with all attacks bouncing off it as it refuses you entry into this other room. After going around the dungeon, you come across two strange areas, each with their own text. The forbidden path began with ice magic. Follow the white cloak. You then come across this strange figure, covered in a white cloak, and after finding them, you're able to defeat those previously invincible enemies, freezing them solid with this mage's ice magic. And each time you command them to attack, they seem to be taking damage, similar to the effects of the Thorn Ring. After freezing that blue bird, you and the mage come across this strange maze, a puzzle that holds a lot more significance than what's on the surface. During the Spamton sweepstakes, there was a series of blog posts that were written by Noelle, with one post in particular being titled Ice Palace _ Glacier, the name of the song that was playing in the background. Noelle talks about how in one of the games she played as a kid, she was stuck on this maze puzzle because she never got the character that guides you through it. But after trying every single route repeatedly, she eventually came across a secret door that she couldn't open without a key. But despite never finding the key, she ended up getting consistently good at navigating the maze. In order to solve this puzzle, you need to try every direction, and if the mage stops following you down a path, you know that direction's wrong. After letting the white mage be your guide, you make it to this strange door, the music in the background cutting out completely. The door itself has a red outline with red horns on the frame, with said red horns being an accessory that Chris used to wear. As you touch the door, the ice key vanishes from your inventory, with text saying that it was used up. Then the text states that she was used up, with the white mage disappearing behind Chris, and as you walk through the door, the entire area is shrouded in darkness. As you go further into the room, a voice tells Chris that they found its secret hiding spot, and as you go deeper, you come across something akin to a save point, and when you interact with it, you obtain the shelter key, with the voice thanking Chris specifically for all their hard work. And then, text slowly appeared on the screen. You were used up. As the game cuts to black, with Chris turning their head, either to see if anyone was coming into the room, or in my opinion, looking at us, the player. This section was honestly incredible, and it was at this point that I knew I wanted to make a video on this segment of the game. Almost the entirety of the level was referencing Snowgrave, with the white mage representing Noelle, the text about the forbidden path, and the way the mage kept hurting themselves in order to use a spell were all things that happened in Chapter 2. Adding on to this, when you enter the cave that instructs you to go to Northern Light, the music that plays overhead uses the flashback leitmotif. But what does it all mean? Does this segment serve as nothing more than a tutorial on how to start the weird route? Well, of course not. The ice maze is an integral part as to why it goes deeper. Not only does Noelle's blog show how the entirety of the game Chris is playing was based off of the Dragon Blazers video game, but it's also implied that the reason why Noelle never got the guide character for the puzzle was because she herself was supposed to be the guide for another, which explains why she was never able to find the key to the door in the first place. But why is Dragon Blazers so important? Well, it's because during Gerson's fight in Chapter 4, he tells Susie about the chapters in his book, which were inspired by the prophecy, telling her about the first chapter where the heroes defeat a king and stop a dragon, referencing the Spade King and stopping a dragon referring to Susie becoming Chris's friend, the second chapter that takes place in a city, and in the third chapter, Gerson titles it The Isles of Northern Light, where the heroes travel to a lost land, with Northern Light being the place Chris travels to in this part of the game. It's revealed that Dragon Blazers itself was inspired by Gerson's Lord of the Hammer novel, and although Dragon Blazers did change some things around, it was still inspired by Lord of the Hammer, which was in turn inspired by the prophecy. I believe that it symbolizes that the entirety of this game is supposed to mirror parts of the prophecy that's so prominent in Chapter 4. After seeing the stuff we already know, the aspects of the game that mirror Chapter 2, we see Noelle being sacrificed or used up, and then after getting the key to the bunker, Chris gets used up, showing that at some point in time, both Chris and Noelle are seemingly going to run out of use, with Chris looking back at us signifying that we might be the ones to throw them out. But I'd never throw out Chris, because who else am I gonna ship with Birdley? Overall, this section of the game is tense, creepy, and we now know that it has aspects of the previous chapter's history and even parts of it that come later. But what does it all mean? Well, we've got one last section, so let's get into it. Right before you reach the big screen, you're stopped by a semi-petrified Ram, who tells Chris that he got the game ready for them one last time. Before moving on to play, Ram questions why Chris created the Dark Fountain in the first place, bringing up how because of them, Toriel was trapped and Darknurse were getting petrified. He asks Chris if they decided to do it for fun. After Ram's questioning, Chris moves on to the final level of the game. As they boot it up, this time, they're in a massive city, accompanied by Susie and Ralsei, who follow them silently. As you walk around the city, you notice that unlike the previous two levels, there are no monsters to be found, just an empty, silent city. And when you finally obtain the sword, you're teleported in front of some strange rope, which is meant to be cut at a higher level. But there's no possible way for you to get stronger. There's simply no monsters to slay. When I killed Susie and Ralsei, my jaw genuinely dropped. And when Chris turns around after killing them both, people usually interpret it as them looking away, not wanting to watch their friends being killed by their own hands. But I interpret this scene as Chris looking directly at us, knowing that it was us who killed them. It's like the game is telling us that in order to truly become stronger, in order to proceed, sacrifices needed to be made. After killing your friends, you now have enough strength to break through the ropes and continue forward, entering a manhole. In the manhole is another dungeon where you battle through many different monsters. As you continue through the dungeon, you eventually kill all the monsters within each room, but your level still isn't maximum. That's when you enter one of the last rooms in the dungeon, which is filled with dozens of monsters. They don't move and they don't fight back, and once you kill every last one of them, You finally hit max level. It seems like all of these monsters came to this room to hide. In fact, the entirety of the dungeon itself seems to have been made to hide from Chris, which explains why the city is entirely empty, with every monster taking refuge underground. What's interesting is that someone made a post online talking about how many of the monsters in this level resemble monsters in the light world, which could represent all the Lightners who are going to the dark world. And within one of these rooms is a black, shadowy creature referred to as the Black Deer, which mirrors your movements, and by the end, you have to slay it too. But what's interesting is that you eventually gain control of this Black Deer's movements, and when you get close to Chris, they attack it on their own. This might allude to Noelle, who, after the events of the Weird Root in Chapter 4, seems to be gaining a soul of their own, which means we might control her later on. As Chris finally moves forward as strong as they could be, they reach a long hallway, watching as Tenna laments to himself about locking Toriel away, blaming everything that happened on Spamton, saying that if he didn't run away after taking a phone call, he could have learned the secrets to becoming a big shot. As Chris makes their presence known, Tenna tells them that he held up his part of the deal, asking Chris not to turn him off again, with the deal the two made not being explicitly said. Because of the way Tenna begs not to be turned off again, along with a previous chat between Tenna and Susie, it's quite possible that Chris made a deal with Tenna to keep the Fun Gang busy, which is one of the first hints that Chris and the Knight are working together. No matter what, you need to kill him, and after that, you find yourself in a golden forest, the exact same one in Hometown. And when you continue down the path, you find yourself right at that old bunker. As you approach the bunker, we see Chris physically trying to push you back in the game, trying to get NES Chris to move backwards. But after pushing through Chris's resistance, you enter the bunker with the key. As you travel through the bunker, everything is shrouded in darkness, and once you reach a completely black room, that voice from the second round calls out to you, asking Chris if the reason they're searching for all these shadow crystals is simply for fun. The voice asks Chris if they honestly think that by getting these crystals in the mantle that they'll get what they want, telling Chris that a part of them was definitely enjoying all of this, with that part of Chris possibly referring to us, the soul, or with the Weird Roots dialogue suggesting that because of the soul's control, Chris could have some sick relief knowing that they don't need to be held accountable for what happened during Snowgrave. The being then reveals itself to be the Shadow Mantle, and during the battle, it uses fire magic along with summoning these strange cat-like creatures with that smiling, heterochromic face to attack you with. Now, although its eyes could have some significant meaning, the smile itself and the creature's cat-like appearance could be referencing the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, a theory that's been around for a long time, but with these monsters, it definitely adds more evidence to it. Within Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat is supposed to act as a guide of sorts to Alice, which could represent how within the game, these cats were guiding Chris to the Shadow Mantle, and potentially through the prophecy itself. Someone online also pointed out how it's the direct opposite of the annoying dog. After the mantle is defeated, it tells Chris that it finally got to see their eyes flicker red, and tells Chris that without play, the knife grows dull, granting them the Shadow Mantle. Now throughout the game, Chris's eyes have become red several times, with the reason behind it unknown, and the knife grows dull could have many different meanings. We know that Chris is most definitely working with the Roaring Knight in some way, with the comment on how the knife grows dull along with Chris being used up in the previous part of the game shows that at some point, Chris's use to some higher power is gonna be exceeded, and they'll be replaced. As Chris approaches the Shadow Mantle in the game, NES Chris is too small to reach up, but as you navigate the room, a path leads out of it and into the real world itself. As Chris sees the smaller version of themselves on the floor, they drop their controller in horror, backing up as it slowly walks toward them despite the controller being dropped. It's such a shocking, captivating scene, and one that I feel is extremely compelling to look at from Chris's perspective. Chris is coming face to face with a reflection of themselves, the way they believe we view them. Small, almost puny and completely under the soul's control. Because of the size of NES Chris, regular Chris was most definitely reminded of Spamton, seeing a version of themselves that mirrored Spamton's small appearance while being puppeted by another being. Chris already related to Spamton's plight, but seeing this in front of them must have been a whole nother level of traumatizing. As NES Chris disappears, Susie arrives and asks Chris if they're having fun playing alone. If Chris responds no, Susie tells them that if they're not having fun, just don't play it, ripping the controller out of the game and telling Chris to stop making her and Ralsei wait. After Susie's appearance, it made me remember why I love her and Chris's dynamic so much. One of Chris's first acts that defied the soul's control was protecting Susie, and throughout it all, she remained their constant anchor. The way she rips the controller out of the game signifies that maybe, with her by Chris's side, they'll be able to gain full control of themselves again. Or you know, you can use NES Chris to make a cruisy moment. Either one works. This entire segment was honestly incredible. The way you had to sacrifice your friends, and the hints toward all of this being part of the prophecy was just all so bone-chilling intense. It was amazing. And after you complete this game, if you choose to attack Tenna during his actual fight, Chris does way more damage than both Susie and Ralsei, which could be connected to their anger at what they witnessed, or it could be related to the deal the two of them made together. The only complaint I had during it was that the secret boss itself wasn't that amazing. The build-up was perfect, creating so much tension and concern towards what would happen to everyone. But the boss didn't have the same weight as Spamton or even Jevil, and Jevil was locked up for 95% of the game. I even told my friends this, but like most things I talk about, I was very, very wrong. When I faced that Rotten Knight for the first time, I was super hyped. This big bad was talked about so many times before by so many of the major characters, and taking it on this early had me on the edge of my seat. And like most people, I got my ass kicked. But then, with Chris, Susie, and Ralsei defeated and all hope seeming lost, nothing happened, because I forgot to put on the Shadow Mantle after I got it. I only remembered it was an actual item to wear when talking with Sham during Chapter 4. He told me that there was no way I could have won without it, and I was like, oh crap. Yeah, I'm a silly goose. But after reloading to Chapter 3 and equipping the Shadow Mantle, the real secret boss battle could begin, and oh boy was it a crazy battle. Every one of its attacks had my palms sweating and my heart pounding. Now this was a secret boss. Honestly, a lot of people didn't seem to consider the Roaring Knight a secret boss, believing that the Shadow Mantle itself was the real one. But because the Roaring Knight is the one who gets you the Shadow Crystal, and the fact you're under the assumption that you're supposed to lose that fight, I consider it a secret boss. Despite how absolutely ridiculous that fight was, once you get consistent with the moves, it's honestly a lot of fun. Not only is it a good battle, but it also hints at a lot of things that come later in Chapter 4. We see more hints at Chris and the Knight's compliance, we see Susie acting more like the main protagonist, and it even brings in PK Starstorm. Absolutely incredible. The only problem now is that if I'm ever hit by any other enemy, all I can think to myself is, I beat the Knight. How am I struggling against this? Everything about the build-up in the fight itself was amazing, but the question remains, what does any of it actually mean? I believe that the original game is supposed to reference what RPG games were in the past, slaying monsters and gaining strength. But by playing the game like a traditional original RPG like the one in Chapter 3, it can lead to dire consequences, with what's shown warning the player of the things that could happen if they continue killing. What we were shown could quite possibly be what occurs between the main parts of the prophecy. It's quite possible that through the weird route, while there's still gonna be 3 heroes, 2 of them aren't gonna be Susie and Ralsei. But we don't know for sure. It's like Gerson said, stories change all the time. What we saw here today could just be an interpretation of what happens in the prophecy. The future isn't entirely set in stone, and in the end, your choices do matter. Well, that was certainly an intense video for 3 and 4. Leave some comments on things I didn't mention or your own interpretations. I've got so many different things I want to talk about, but I've also got a massive list of videos I need to make. What can I say? It's the summer of Kustopia. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.